Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the hills, there lived a kind but poor shoemaker named Henrik. He had once been prosperous, crafting the finest shoes in the land, but hard times had come, and his business had dwindled. His fingers had grown stiff with age, and no matter how hard he worked, he could not make shoes as swiftly or beautifully as before. One cold winter evening, Henrik sat by the fire with his wife, Ingrid. All he had left was a single piece of fine leather, enough to make just one pair of shoes. "I will rise early and make these shoes," Henrik said. "Perhaps they will bring enough money to buy more leather." With that, he carefully laid out the leather on his workbench, and they went to bed, hoping for a brighter tomorrow. But when Henrik woke the next morning, he was in for a surprise. On his workbench sat a pair of the most beautiful shoes he had ever seen. They were crafted with such precision and artistry that no human hands could have made them. The stitches were perfect, the design flawless, and the leather shone as if touched by magic. He and Ingrid were amazed. Soon after, a wealthy customer entered the shop and, upon seeing the shoes, insisted on buying them for a generous price. With the money, Henrik was able to buy enough leather for 2 pairs of shoes. That night, once again, Henrik laid out the leather and went to bed. And again, in the morning, he found 2 pairs of exquisite shoes waiting on his workbench. The pattern repeated night after night. Each morning, Henrik would find the leather he'd set out transformed into the most beautiful shoes, and soon his shop was bustling with business. Wealthy customers from near and far came to buy the magical shoes. Henrik and Ingrid were overjoyed but curious. Who was behind this strange and wondrous work? One night, they decided to stay awake and hide in a corner of the workshop to find out. As the clock struck midnight, the door creaked open, and to their astonishment, 2 tiny elves scampered into the room. Their clothes were ragged, but the nimble fingers worked swiftly, sewing, cutting, and stitching with such skill that Henrik could hardly believe his eyes. In no time, they had finished their work and disappeared into the night. The shoemaker and his wife were overwhelmed with gratitude. "These elves have saved us," Ingrid said. "We must do something to repay their kindness." Henrik agreed. That very day, they set to work. Ingrid made tiny clothes for the elves, warm woolen coats, trousers, and little boots. Henrik fashioned the finest shoes he could for their small feet. That night, instead of laying out leather, they placed the tiny garments on the workbench and waited. At midnight, the elves appeared once more. When they saw the little clothes, their faces lit up with joy. They quickly dressed themselves, admiring the fine craftsmanship. Dressed in their new outfits, the elves danced with glee around the workshop, then scampered out the door, never to return. Though the elves never came back, Henrik and Ingrid's fortune continued to grow. The shoemaker's business thrived, and he was able to work at a pace he could manage, knowing that the kindness of the elves had set them on the path to prosperity. Answer: Henrik and Ingrid lived happily ever after, forever grateful for the magical help that came to them when they needed it most.
For more, please like and subscribe our channel.